Hi, Shabrina.
Hi, Sandra. How are you?
I'm good, you?
Good, thank you. Alice, so excited to have you on our podcast today.
Thank you both for having me on your podcast.
We are delighted, really. Take us back to the moment where you started feeling that your perimenopausal symptoms were affecting your work.
Well, I can't think of that there was one particular moment because I didn't actually realise that I was perimenopausal. I was having all sorts of symptoms, and in fact, the doctor was having me investigated for heart problems because I was getting palpitations, and those were happening at all times of the day and night. So I was actually on a heart monitor for some time. Then I started to get some brain fog, and I found that my contributions to meetings were less valuable than I thought they were before, and other people started to notice that as well. So sometimes I would start a sentence and I had no idea where that sentence was going, and I started to lose my confidence. And then one day I was listening to, nobody really knew what was happening to me, but one day I was listening to a programme on Women's Hour.
On the BBC?
On the BBC, yes. And the author, Jeanette Winterson, was talking about her perimenopause. And she started listing her symptoms, and I was ticking off my own symptoms in my head. Yeah. Exactly.
May I ask you how old you were at the time when it started?
I was about 45.
Okay.
And just so many things happened at once. I really didn't expect to be having perimenopause at that time. I was thinking it would be probably when I was in my 50s.
That was unexpected.
It was unexpected, and I didn't really have anyone to talk to about it. Had you
spoken to? Yeah, I was going to ask you. Did you speak to your mum?
I did ask my mum, and she said that she'd never been menopausal.
Oh wow,
that's a bold statement.
Yes.
I know. I did say to her, so when you were 75 and you had a hysterectomy, you could still have children, and she's like, "Don't be silly, dear." So that was where that conversation went.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So it was taboo, kind of.
Yes, I think nobody really was talking about it. I mean, this is already like 15, almost 15 years ago. And I think that the conversation's come on quite a long way since then. But I still think that people could be talking about it more.
Yeah.
Nobody's really prepared when they get there. And I think you should know that it's coming for you.
Yeah.
Right?
What happened once you figured out that what you're actually experiencing was perimenopausal symptoms?
So I immediately hot-footed it back to the doctors, and I said to them, you just had to look at my birth date to realise I was, menopausal. Why didn't you think of it? Because I'd had all of these tests, and I was really going through hell thinking about, like, well, what's wrong with me? And the doctor, who was a new doctor, female doctor that I saw, she said, she just laughed and she said, your friends, they won't understand you, and your family, they'll lose their patience with you, and you'll be very lonely.
Oh, wow. That's not the advice
I know.
That's terrible.
It was quite terrible, but it did kind of come to pass like that. I can laugh about it now. But at the time I was thinking, that's ridiculous. How can a natural phase of your life turn into something so catastrophic?
Yeah. Well, you're touching on something that most women experience because it's like this massive transformation. Like especially getting through the symptoms and, dealing with it at work, friends and family. It's a big change from what you've previously experienced.
Yes,
yeah,
it is.
Sandra, what's really going on? So you spoke about brain fog as being one of the main symptoms. Like, what's going on, Sandra, in the body with the hormones that you start experiencing this type of brain fog?
So brain fog is not a diagnosis; it's a symptom. So it could be very frustrating because when you are very driven and like you know what you are saying, and suddenly like you end up like you described in a total fog. Feeling like you are in the cloud and you don't know what you're going to say next. What happens in the brain is that, like, we know, like, that our hormones fluctuate. Okay, progesterone drops and estrogen fluctuates during that perimenopausal period. But what happens is that we have a lot of, like, estrogen receptors in our brain, specifically on the prefrontal cortex and the hippocampus. And this is where, like, things derails in a way, because we don't have enough estrogen to have like that like memory recall, to have this focus. And on top of it, like estrogen supports like the production of neurotransmitters like acetylcholine, dopamine, which we deeply need to be able to have like those functions optimum. So there's a bit of a...
So does everyone who is in perimenopause experience brain fog, or it's just some people?
I would say it depends on like the fluctuations. Every woman is different. So we might talk a bit later on how to deal with it. But like, I think like there are a lot of components that are very important. Yes, your hormones fluctuate, but in the same time, there's a lot of diet and lifestyle interventions that are helpful to support your brain to function optimally, I would say.
Yeah.
So Alice, did you experience anything else? You did mention heart palpitations, but any other symptoms?
So eventually, I mean, the brain fog was a constant, and then eventually, following on from that, I started to get hot flushes, and I could never really predict when that was going to be. But usually, I had like an inkling that it was going to happen. I used to get a sweaty palm moment, and the brain fog would become worse, and it was like I was hurtling down a tunnel, and then I would start to get these hot flushes, and then everything else went out of my mind. That's all I could think of.
So this was every day that you would be experiencing?
Yes, and I could never really tell. It didn't really seem to follow a pattern. I was keeping notes, but it didn't follow a pattern that it would be more in the morning or the afternoon. It just seemed to occur whenever it wanted to. Yeah.
Anytime.
Yeah, I felt like there was two people inside of me, and one was not acting in my best interest.
That's a funny way to see.
Yeah, that's really how I felt like. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, the hot flushes were quite debilitating, and at that time, I think we've talked about it before, Shabrina, but I started just wearing black clothes because I found that was the easiest thing. I could take them to work, and everything that I changed into, nobody would really notice that I'd changed. So I felt like I could really take the focus away from.
Well, it's humiliating.
That. It was
like,
humiliating.
Yeah, taking like everyone knowing that it's not like putting like a joke on it, but it's like, you know, when you're a kid and you wet your pants and then you go, you know, you come back in.
I think the
or you have your period,
there.
or you have your period, right? And then everyone knows that something's happened.
Yeah.
And it's like you're wearing that something happened. Versus
you really lose your confidence because of those things. Yeah. And I think that you go from being seen as a competent person, because I actually was very, very good at my job. I was at the top of my game. I had so much experience to bring to what I did. And I couldn't capitalize on that. And I felt like people were seeing me in a completely different way. So just being able to change into something that looked exactly what I just had on was quite helpful to my sense of confidence.
Yeah, I think
that's
that's a great tip to be able to change, you know. Well, now, you know, we're going to talk about it later. There's, you know, some other solutions in terms of what you wear, but dealing with that at the time when no one was speaking about it and there wasn't, you know, anything you could do about it. It was great that, you know, you figured out, okay, I'm going to wear black. And I am going to change and no one's going to notice. It'll be the same T-shirt, but no one's noticed. Yeah. Yeah. Sandra, can you give us the science behind the hot flush?
Yeah, I can. I think like this famous hormone, the estrogen, as well control the temperature via the part of the brain that is the hypothalamus. So what happens is that like it triggers a message, because there are fluctuations of estrogen. There is a message that is sent to the hypothalamus saying there is a warning and we need a cooling effect. So then what happens is that you start sweating. You start having like those sweating and hot flushes that are coming because like the temperature regulation doesn't work.
It's not working.
It's not working. You know, it's like you are going to your thermostat and then like the thermostat is like is off, basically. Not off completely, but
malfunctioning.
Exactly.
Yes.
Malfunctioning. So that's one big point. And then I think as well, the blood sugar regulation is a very important thing, but I think we might talk about it a bit later. But yeah,
Are hot flushes and night sweats, are they related to each other?
yeah, definitely.
Is that just the evening version of the hot flush?
Yeah, it's the cooling effect.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the cooling effect that your body needs to regulate its temperature. But in the same time, I think like when you put in that bucket the stress that you are under, because you are in the meeting, what you described, and then you feel like this surge of a hot flush coming up, and you don't know how to deal with it, and you are stressed because you have to deliver during that meeting.
And everyone's looking at you.
Exactly. So then you have this cortisol, this stress hormone released in that symphony of like dysregulation of hormones that like doesn't help, basically.
No. So if you're in a high stress environment, you're probably going to have more hot flushes.
You are prone to have more hot flushes, definitely. Yes.
That makes sense.
Were you experiencing multiple hot flushes a day?
I was at a certain point, yes. And also feeling, this dysregulation of your
body temperature.
Your body temperature. I was also feeling freezing cold for no reason at all.
Yeah,
so throwing doors open. I couldn't stand for the door to be closed. Even, sometimes I'd feel too hot, but then if there was air conditioning, I would often feel too cold as well.
Yeah.
Like seconds afterwards. And getting up, opening doors, closing doors, people started to really notice that and comment on it as well. So that didn't help either.
No, it didn't help. How did your work support you while you were, going through this
Well,
cycle?
there was no conversation about menopause. There was no policies to do with it. In fact, I did feel very alone. The NHS doctor that I saw just that one time, she was not wrong. You are quite lonely, or I was quite lonely at that time. I didn't really have much support from the NHS. No one suggested HRT or anything like that. And
so you didn't know what to do with yourself?
I didn't really know what to do. I was really clutching at straws during that time. And my husband was extremely supportive. But, also he was crashing around in the dark trying to work out, well, how do we find a way forward? Because
it's
sometimes
not the case.
he was...
It's not the case of many women don't have that support system
No.
around them. So it's a big thing, isn't it?
And some people can't talk to their husbands about it. They feel like it would be... too serious an admission.
Well, I was also going to say,
suffering.
I know that brain fog, some people talk about dementia too, because it's one of the symptoms. And so is it early onset dementia?
Charlie was very, very worried about that. And I used to struggle for words and be talking to him and saying, oh no, what is that word? What's the word for, what are those, what are those puppies that cats have? Like, kittens. Or I'd be struggling for that. What's the opposite? What's that? Oh, the door that you can only go out of it. It's only an outdoor. It's not an indoor. What is that word? So
meanwhile,
point,
his brain's getting stronger because you're throwing these puzzles at him.
But you know what happens to me sometimes? I can't remember names of people. I want to call someone.
Yeah,
Sandra, I have the exact same problem.
Like I have the picture. I mean, in my head, I know who I want to call. And then I'm on my phone and I'm thinking, who am I calling now?
I think we need to start deleting all the contacts in our phone that we don't use because it will actually, simplify.
Well, it's a classic sort of kind of mother-in-law joke, isn't it? Which I hate now. I hate those mother-in-law jokes and people essentially laughing at midlife women, but coming into a room and thinking, what am I doing here? I have no idea what I'm doing here. Hang on a minute. Wait a minute. And actually can make you quite irritable because...
Did you already forgot your keys in the fridge?
I haven't done that. But I know a friend of mine put her keys in the recycling bin outside by accident. And then she had a tag, one of those tags that tells you where your keys are.
Yes.
And she was tracking it on her phone and it went to a recycling unit. And she thought her keys had been stolen, but she actually followed them to a recycling unit up in Enfield. They didn't find them again, I have to say.
Of course not.
But Yeah, so things like that, that really takes its toll over time, I think. And in a work environment, when you don't have any support and there isn't anybody you can talk to about it, and in fact, in my case particularly, both my line manager and my overall manager, it felt like they were kind of ganging up on me. They used to laugh that, oh, here she goes, she's not going to be able to finish that sentence, or, oh, here she goes, walking over to the door, opening the door, shutting the door. Just drawing attention to all the things
nice
that I was doing.
That's quite nice too.
And didn't you say that your boss happened to be a woman too?
They were both women of a certain age, but everybody, this is one of my lessons in this. I actually help a lot of perimenopausal women in my work as a yoga teacher. I get many midlife women. And people's symptoms are, on a spectrum. Some people don't experience hardly anything. Lucky them. But sometimes they can't believe that people have such debilitating symptoms as they do on the end, at the end of the spectrum. Yeah.
People. I mean, women sometimes feel ashamed to show that, like,
that was the word I was looking for.
that they fail themselves in a way. No, they can't find a word, or they don't know where they are going, or so you tend to mask what's going on. So it's not helpful, isn't it? Because like it doesn't help the society to understand and people around us to think, oh, there's something going on. We need to support.
But also showing compassion.
Definitely.
Like women showing each other compassion. Because your boss or your bosses may, as you said, they may have had lighter symptoms or no symptoms, but just having the compassion to know that our partners in crime, our fellow women are also, is going through something. Yeah. And I may have not experienced it, but I should give that person the compassion to support them through this phase. Yeah,
I mean, there is much more of a conversation thanks to, the TV personalities that have come out as, talking about menopause and really shouting about it from the rooftops. Yeah. And I think that's been really helpful, but I still do talk to women in their 30s who don't really have any idea of menopause. So they haven't heard the conversation. Sometimes I wonder, is it just because I'm of the age that I am that I'm hearing it more, that I'm more tuned into it?
I think you're right. And hopefully, this is all part of the education, that our children get. Like I have 2 young daughters, one's 13, one's going to be 12. At school, they're learning about sex education. And one would hope that they're also learning, they're learning about periods, they're learning about pregnancy. And then the next part, is, going through menopause. Yeah. And I think it's important to have that conversation so they know what to expect. And, I always have the conversation at home with them, especially now. I'm trying to keep it out in the open.
Yeah, because I think women didn't really talk to their daughters about it. And then, sometimes during that time, like there were teenage daughters with perimenopausal mothers, and sometimes there's a disconnect between the two of them, and the children don't really understand what their mum's going through, and she's trying to keep it away from them. But somehow, sometimes the closeness goes. And I've had that quite a lot, that people, when they start to go through it themselves, women understand what their mums were going through and kind of grieving the relationship that they didn't have had they been able to have a more open and honest discussion about it earlier on.
Yeah, but I think it's as well about having like maybe enough brain space. And sometimes we may not have it when we go through those fluctuations. Yeah. So it's about like going more inwards in a way, I think, even from the perspective of you are in the cloud in a way when you have that bread fog. At the same time, you want to be, you want to feel that like connection with the external world is harder. You don't feel like the necessity to connect because you are in that state.
Well, I think when you stop feeling like yourself, then you start shutting people out, as you said, the external world. what can you do about that, Sandra?
But I think
Because
it's a signal, don't you think, Shabrina? I think it's a signal that like we receive at this period of life. Like we have to turn inwards. We have to press the reset button, and we have to rethink how do we want to lead our life now, because there are a lot of changes, but at the same time we have a lot of experiences, wisdom. And I think from a spiritual point of view, I think like the body is well structured.
Yeah.
So we go through this phase of life, but in the same time, I think it's a big signal. Who do we want to be now? Because we were like fighters, we were taking care of everyone, we're having responsibilities, careers, jobs, but now what do we want to do for ourselves?
It's like in the past, you know, when you're a younger person, you're trying to be chosen, but when you get to be this age, you can choose. It's your turn to choose.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's
You don't
very
need
well
to
put.
feel like you have to be chosen anymore.
When
so that
did
gives us a kind of strength.
I was going to ask you actually, when did you decide at work enough was enough? Because you felt unsupported. You were having, you know, you didn't have a solution
Yeah.
for your brain
Well,
fog.
Ultimately, what happened was they decided to restructure my role. And I don't know, I never queried it really, but it seems to be now that it could have been a kind of constructive way of getting rid of me. But I
Just to
had to
shoo out.
reapply
Yeah.
for my job. And I decided not to reapply for my job. And I did have a discussion with my husband, and I'd been teaching yoga at that point for many years, part-time. And he said, just go for it. Let's, just start to do that full-time. You know, there's a need out there for, because my yoga practice had also been a supportive part of my process. He said, there's a need for you to share that with other women of the same, who are in the same.
So you
Share your wisdom.
you find your mission there.
Yeah, I did. That's true. So I kind of transitioned into doing that more full time. And I just left that job behind. But I always felt sad about it because
Of course, it was.
I was really good at what I did, and suddenly I wasn't able to do that anymore. And I would have liked to have left under different circumstances.
No, I hear you. It's hard. And you've actually spent so much time, investing in that part of you too. And then just having to say, bye,
Yeah.
I'm done now.
Yeah. Yes.
You
Yeah,
had
it was hard.
you had a funny story, Alice, when we were talking earlier
Oh, yeah.
about, brain fog and, you didn't, you'd gone to the NHS, there was no solutions, and you
Yeah.
started to research.
I was just sort of desperately trying to find something that would help me focus my mind, especially during meetings. And so I was trying all sorts of things. And there's a huge market out there. People can spend so much money, and not all of it is science-backed. In fact, probably most of it is not science-backed. And the funniest thing that I did buy was some sort of magnet that you had to put down your pants. And it was supposed to help you with your focus, but all it did...
How big was the magnet?
It was probably...
Around one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
about
Like
that
a
big.
circle?
Lady
No,
magnet,
yeah.
Charlie called it. And in coffee shops, like, it would attract spoons if I got close enough to the table. And one very embarrassing time waiting in a supermarket checkout, there was like a metal strip around the hand. I kept getting stuck to the metal strip.
Did it
Much
help
to the-
with your brain fog, by the way?
It did not help me with my brain fog. That's not surprising, I imagine. But at the time, I was just thinking, I'll just do anything to try and
Of
get
course,
myself out of that.
You become desperate when
Yeah,
you
because
don't find
it's-
solutions.
Yeah, it's not just, this is a point I did want to make, it's not just that you're doing it, like a few days a month. Say when you have your period and you might be down for a couple of days or a week or whatever, or in pain, but it passes and then you go to the next phase of your cycle. But with this, it's day after day, month after month, and year after year. It goes on for so long, and there's no respite there, and it fluctuates, but you really go through it for a very, very long time.
You really
stuck.
suffered,
Yeah.
Alice.
Yeah.
You
it
really
was-
did. How many years were you?
I think it probably it probably was, I felt like I'd gone into a cave. It was
Right.
about 7 years of being in the cave. And then I realised that actually it was a tunnel and that you come out of it the other side, but not as the same person.
But so what solutions did you find? I mean, why 7 years?
So
Why not less? Why not more?
I don't know why that would be, but eventually I did get a great gynecologist. She was absolutely fantastic, really listened to me and helped me so much. I still see her. And she was like, well, we have to get you on HRT. And for me, that was an amazing solution because even I have got patches and just putting a patch on, by the afternoon, I started to feel like the brain fog was actually lifting.
Wow.
It was so quick and really profound. And I have a quite a light dose, but it really made a huge difference to me.
HRT could be beneficial for some women.
Yeah, I know. I realise it's not the solution for everybody.
No, everyone.
But
is
I think it's
different,
important that, you know, the message is to our listeners that if you are experiencing symptoms and they're causing you not to be able to live your life the way that you're currently leading it, you don't need to just deal with it. You know, there are solutions out there, and, you know, HRT may be one of them. But, you
it's
know,
about not staying in that fog.
yeah.
I mean, it's about being in charge of your own health
Yeah.
and not waiting for 7 years, maybe. I think
Without Alice was at a time, though, where...
Yeah, there wasn't any solution at 100%.
Yeah.
And, like, I feel for you. I mean, it's quite a long period to stay in that state. So I think, like, HRT could be a solution, diet and lifestyle as well. I mean, like, it's a mix of everything that
So
works.
what can you do in terms of diet to help you with the hot flushes specifically?
Yeah, I think if we talk about hot flashes, what I see the most in clinical practice is the fact that, like, women tend not to have their blood sugar regulated. You know, they miss meals, they don't have breakfast, they stop having carbs.
I was about to say that. They don't eat carbs.
Yeah, I know. I'm quite repetitive sometimes when I talk about it, but it's the truth. I mean, like, I see it every day.
I changed my diet so completely.
You see?
So I'd been a really staunch vegetarian since I was about 15. And I'm not recommending this to anybody, but for me it was very important to start to eat more protein. I couldn't get enough protein as a vegetarian.
Yes, it's very important. Protein is very important, and you might have had probably nutrient deficiencies because you were on that type of diet.
Yeah.
So let's not forget that, like, you need a lot of vitamin Bs, a lot of magnesium, proteins, omega-3s for your brain to function optimally.
Exactly.
So if you don't have them through your diet or through supplements, then like, it's an extra toll, right, on your brain. Plus the blood sugar imbalance, and you mix it with, like, stress coming up.
Yeah.
You know, it's a turmoil. You are in a full turmoil.
You're constantly in flight or fight. And I mean, I did change my diet completely at that time, and I've definitely had benefits from doing that. But I've always done a lot of exercise as well, and that was very helpful for my brain fog because I've been doing yoga for so long. It was very familiar to me. I felt quite competent doing it.
But you know what, Alice? There is research on yoga specifically that says that it helps you creating new brain cells when you do yoga, and to strengthen your existing brain cells.
Yeah, well, I absolutely believe that.
Better start having lessons with Alice.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And the breathing practices that you can do as well really help to calm your nervous system. So it's the one, you know, it's the one thing that you can actually change. You can't change your heart rate. You know, you can change your mindset just by breathing optimally. And, you know, we were talking a little bit earlier about when you get a hot flush, there are certain breathing practices you can do to enhance that feeling of cooling. And if you pair that up with a positive visualization of being somewhere cold, having cold air coming across you, and,
cold
you know,
thoughts.
doing that... I said the Shatali breathing, where you make a straw tongue. Anyone can do it now. You know, if you can make your tongue into a kind of straw. If you can't do that, some people can't tongue roll. So just make a small aperture in the mouth and then just like breathe in, breathe the air in. You can feel that cooling effect.
Yeah.
And then out through the nose.
So that's something, if you're experiencing hot flush, like when you're having a hot flush.
Yeah, it really does help.
You can use that Shatali
breathing.
breathing.
And just if you pair that with imagining cold air just flowing over your limbs, and I quite often get people to just, because it's soothing, isn't it? So people put a calming hand on you sometimes if you're like spiraling out of control.
Right.
And just like, just stroking your forearms and imagining cold air covering your arms.
That's quite...
It's the power of visualization, right?
Yeah,
it's very powerful. But from a practical point of view, Shabrina, what do you think we can do when we have a hot flushes?
In terms of dressing?
Yes, in terms of dressing and in terms of like, what advice would you give to our listeners?
So I tell my clients who experience a lot of hot flushes, because fashion does not need to stop because you're perimenopausal and you're having hot flushes. The best thing you can do is start with layering, like you're going skiing, have a base layer, and your base layer should be natural fabric, but also mixed with a fabric that has moisture wicking ability, because as you said, you
are sweating.
You're sweating, and you need something to keep you cool. So something like polyester won't let out the heat, but something like cotton will let out the heat. And then if you pair it with another fabric like modal, it then is able to take away the wet feelings, or whisk away the wet and the odor that comes with the hot flush. So that's a great tip. So having that base layer and then adding like a second layer, like a cotton, or a light, like a light cardi, even scarves, because you are going to get cold.
And then being able to remove them and play around during the day, right?
Exactly.
But there is something else as well. I think like when you are in that state, you are very tired as well. I think it's quite tiring.
Yeah.
So then, you can wake up in the morning, you have to go to work, but then you are just stuck in front of your wardrobe because, as Alice mentioned, she said, I just wanted to wear black because it was like an easy solution.
Yeah, so even before...
What do you suggest?
So I have a good solution for that. But even before we talk about, you are tired, and one of the best gifts you can give to yourself is some great pajamas.
Oh, yes, for the night. You talk
for the
about
night,
the night.
yeah. Because once you add that into your night routine, like putting on your, Marks and Spencer's actually has come out with this new cooling range of pajamas, which I added to cart this morning. But, being able to sleep, and I was like really hot last night. So being able to like control that.
But it's very hard, isn't it? Because like I realize sometimes in the evening, like I feel cold when I go to sleep. So I want to have something comfy and warm.
Yeah.
And then I feel like, no, I shouldn't have
Buy those pajamas, Sandra.
Yes.
And they're long sleeves, so they do keep you warm too. But then when you're hot, they have the cotton and, they take out the heat. And then also if you have like obviously if you're having like night sweats, you're then going to feel wet. And that's just like the worst feeling, and that's going to wake you up. So if there's a fabric in there that's wicking it away, you're going to sleep so much better.
Yes.
There's a really good company that does cool blankets as well. They're fantastic.
Yeah.
Cool Embrace.
I think it's all important.
One or two actually quite good companies that do that are selling the sort of menopausal nightwear.
Yeah. There's a bunch of brands actually, and some of them have bamboo in them too, which is also a great fabric.
Yeah.
A natural fabric. But anyway, going back to your question, Sandra.
Yes. When you feel tired and you're in front of your wardrobe and you are stuck in the morning, you have this foggy brain.
Yeah, a lot of women are just going to, I hear from clients that they just default to wearing like the same two outfits over and over again. And I think as women anyway, we're making so many decisions. Like the mental overload is huge. Like even if I just look at myself, even before 8 a.m., I had to decide what the kids are eating, what the other one's taking for lunch, who's walking the dog.
So there's a multitasking going on.
Right. And then when you're dealing with brain fog, you need to save some of that mental capacity for actually, the important things. So for a woman, you know, I say, please don't let your style go. You know, please focus on, you know, how you feel on the outside, because your confidence is so important. And, you know, you touched on that too. Like, you weren't feeling confident, and, you know, you start second guessing yourself. So
because black is in traditional Chinese medicine, it's like it represents stagnation. Black is stagnation of energy. So you were feeling probably like stuck when you were doing that. So then, like, instead of defaulting to two outfits, so
I
recommend
suggest? Like investing, like putting the time in, investing in a capsule wardrobe. You know, a capsule wardrobe doesn't have to be X number of pieces. You know, my capsule wardrobe start with 12 pieces, and they all mix and match. You know, they work for your body, so you don't have to keep trying on, you know, outfits and then defaulting to the same outfit. And, you know, you're going to have go-to outfits. So it simplifies your morning, and, you know, you don't have to worry about that. And you can focus on, you know, worrying about, okay, you've got a big meeting coming up at work, and what are you going to say? So that's my big advice. Be, you know, start with a capsule.
Great advice.
Yeah. So Sandra, something, you know, with brain fog, I feel like it's also a symptom of early onset dementia. And you know, I was with a friend the other day, and we're having a conversation, and she was experiencing brain fog, and she didn't call it out as perimenopause, but what she did say is that I feel like there's something wrong with my brain, and is this, you know, what's coming?
There is a fear. Yeah, I remember feeling that as well, especially when you have like a family history of like dementia or Alzheimer's. You can think, am I starting having those symptoms? But I think like there are similarities and differences, and I think the differences between both, between brain fog and dementia, early onset of dementia, is that one, it's the awareness. Because if you are aware that you are going through brain fog and you are able to implement solutions, then you just have brain fog. If you are not aware, then that's a sign of dementia to start with. And the second point I would like to emphasize on is that if you are able to implement diet and lifestyle modification and you get better, then it's brain fog.
Yeah.
If it doesn't get better and it gets worse and worse, then it might be dementia, the beginning and early onset. But let's not forget that research shows that like women that get an early menopause, so there are different studies like before 40 or before 45, are more prone to develop dementia later on. And as well, women that got on HRT for a very long time, it's like early research, but different type of HRT, so let's not get like carried away with different research, but like they can as well have, they're more prone to have dementia. So it's I mean, what we have to understand is because the brain changes.
Yeah.
So our brain change, and like you have less gray matter, more white matter, and this is, I mean, like basically this is what like might make you more prone to have like dementia. So yes, so there is like it's about how you feel. If you feel you need to get checked, you have a feeling you need to get checked to have a clearer mind, go for it. But if you feel like you are going in the right direction and things improve, then it might just be like perimenopausal symptoms that you can reverse.
Yeah. Well, I think don't always assume the worst. To, you know, you can start thinking that it's perimenopausal, and, you know, putting in what you said, the diet and lifestyle changes.
Definitely. Alice, I have a question for you. What advice would you give to the younger Alice, now that you went through all of that?
Yes, I would say find your tribe, find people that will help you get through this and talk to them. So talk to more people, and just keep trying to find a doctor who's going to help you, who will listen to you. And, you know, continue to do all of the things that you were doing with the exercise, because exercise, to me, it's been a key factor in keeping me sane. So I was saying before that, you know...
I can't agree more.
Yeah,
with what
when I'm doing yoga, I feel really competent. And I added in, when I was perimenopausal, I added in handstands. sometimes I just do hours of handstand practice upside down a day. And I think that really helped me look at things from a different perspective. I completely agree with you. And if I may share my experience, you know, some days I can exercise and do weight trainings and challenge myself. And some days I can't, and then I'll go for yoga. And my mind is so clear after even half an hour of yoga. Yeah. It's so powerful. And I think...
Okay, ladies, you're enticing me to try it. I haven't done it for years, but maybe it's a good time to...
Well, everybody's good at something.
Yeah.
When they start their yoga practice. Just have to find out what it is.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us, Alice. That was great. Thank you for sharing your story.
Yeah.
Sandra, do you have anything that you'd like to share with our listeners in terms of, you know, a key takeaway?
I think like the key takeaway would be like brain fog might be a sacred space, maybe. The space where you have really to pause, reset, like Alice successfully reset, feeling yourself, feeling in tune with a mission. And I think like I'm sure our listeners can reflect and see and take like the best out of this episode and see.
Yeah, and I think it's exciting that, you know, you were in a stage where your career as you knew it ended, but then, you know, you were able to reinvent yourself and you now have a successful yoga business. So that's an exciting takeaway too. So thank you so much, Alice. If you enjoyed today's episode, we'd love for you to share it with a friend who needs it. And we'd also like for you to follow us at Hormones and Heels.
On Instagram, on our YouTube channel, Spotify, Apple Podcast. This is where you can find us. And if you are interested as well, we have the second edition of our workshop coming up soon. You can put your name on our waiting list. So all the information will be in the notes.
And if you want to find out more about Alice and her yoga practice, her details are also in the show notes.
Thank you very much for today, for sharing your wisdom with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.